We are learning the Sicha of Parshas Behaalosecha and Chelek Gimel, 13th volume of Likkutei Sichos, the first Sicha of Parshas Behaalosecha. This is a Sicha on the Rashi, or two Rashis in Parshas Behaalosecha, Pasuk Yud of Perek Yud, chapter 10, verse 10, where the Pasuk reads as follows: Uv'yom simchaschem v'mayadechem v'roshi chodshechem, on the days that you rejoice, and on your Yomim Tovim, on your holidays, and on Rosh Chodesh, uskatem b'chatzeisreis, you should blow in the trumpets. Behaalosecha, and when you're bringing your carbon oilas, v'azicha shalmechem, when you bring your carbonis of shlamim, on these special days, you should blow the trumpets while bringing these karbanis. By blowing these trumpets, this will be like an arousal of a remembrance for the Eibishter. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am your God. So Rashi quotes the words Al Aloisechem, on your karbani oilas, and he explains that b'korban tzibur akasef medaber, that this pasuk is talking about a korban tzibur, the korban oilas that are brought as a communal offerings. So the Rebbe asks the main question is, why does Rashi have to say the word hakasef medaber that pasuk is talking about? Seemingly, you could just say al aloisechem, korban oilas, korban tzibur. We're talking about a korban tzibur. So it's obvious that what Rashi is implying here is that not only the korban oila is a korban tzibur, but all the karbanis in this pasuk, meaning also the zivche shalmechem, also the korban shlamim referred to in this pasuk, is also a korban tzibur. So that leads us to the second, so in a sense that's the question and answer, that by saying hakasef medaber, that the pasuk is talking about a korban tzibur, Rashi is emphasizing that both the korban oila and the korban shlamim are talking about a korban tzibur. Which leads us to the next question then, how does Rashi know that? Where does Rashi know that we're talking about a korban tzibur? Maybe we're talking about a person who wants to bring a korban oila or korban shlamim as a korban yachid, as a korban adava. Now, the Gemara and the Sifri, they have limudim to teach us that it's talking about a korban tzibur. But the issue is that, first of all, it's limudim that Rashi doesn't quote, and we know a rule in the Rebbe's Pshutei Shel Mikra of Rashi is that he's not going to tell us something from the Gemara without telling us if it's not Pshutei Shel Mikra, it's not obvious. He's not just going to go say because that's what the Gemara says. There has to be something that's understood in Pshutei Shel Mikra. And second, the Gemara learns it by comparing the korban shlamim to the korban oila. By Rashi saying hakasef medaber, Rashi is emphasizing that the entire pasuk is talking about a korban tzibur, and that we would know that naturally without learning one from the other. So the primary question then that we need on this Rashi is to understand, how does Rashi know that this pasuk is talking about a korban tzibur? Then Rashi quotes the last words of the pasuk, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am the Lord your God. And he explains that Mikan Lamadnu, from here we learn that there's a concept of Malchias that goes with Zichroines and Shofros, because the word Uskatem is referring to shofar, like the blowing of the trumpets, like the blowing of the shofar. Lizikarein, the pasuk says, V'hoyu lachem lizikarein, it should be as a remembrance, that's Zichroines. And Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I'm your God, is Malchias, is the idea of Malchias. So here the Rebbe asks three questions, or actually together 6 questions on this Rashi. Number one, like we said before, Pshutei Shel Mikra. Why does Rashi have to tell us this drasha that the Gemara learns from here, the Sifri learns from here, that the pasuk is alluding to Malchias, Zichronos, and Shofros as we do it on Rosh Hashanah, and that this is what the pasuk is alluding to? But why does Rashi have to teach us this in Pshutei Shel Mikra? What is missing in the simple understanding of the pasuk that Rashi has to introduce to us this idea, this halacha? Moreover, the simple meaning of the pasuk is not about saying the psukim of Malchias, Zichronos, and Shofros. The simple meaning of the pasuk is that you should blow shofar, and that will be a zikaron for Hashem. It's not about the psukim of Malchias, Zichronos, and Shofros that we say in Rosh Hashanah. In fact, in Parshas Emor, Rashi does speak about those psukim, Malchus, as we'll mention soon. This pasuk doesn't seem to be talking about that in Pshuti Shel Mikra. In fact, even the words Ani Hashem Elokeichem has a Pshuti Shel Mikra meaning. Multiple times, Rashi tells us that the words Ani Hashem Elokeichem means Nenman L'Shalem Sachar, that the Eibishter could be trusted to pay the reward for those that follow his mitzvahs. And that's what the Torah means when it says Ani Hashem Elokeichem. I am your Eibishter who is trustworthy to repay those that do what Hashem wants. So why is Rashi looking for something, another pshat? Why is he looking for another pshat that's not even Pshuti Shel Mikra? And third, if Rashi is explaining the whole pasuk, why is he only quoting the words Ani Hashem Elokeichem? As we've come to see many times in the Likkutei Sichos, that the Rebbe is very particular about which words Rashi quotes in the pasuk in order for us to understand what Rashi's intent is. So if Rashi is explaining how uskaitem corresponds to shofros, Zikaron corresponds to Zichronis, Ani Hashem Elokeichem corresponds to Malchias, so why does Rashi only quote the words Ani Hashem Elokeichem? Furthermore, the Rebbe asks a few questions, what's called diyukim. Diyukim means that the Rebbe is looking at just the language of Rashi. Number one, as we said before, it's not Pshuti Shel Mikra. So before we asked, why is Rashi even bothering bringing something that's not Pshuti Shel Mikra? Now the Rebbe is asking, if he is going to bring it, why doesn't he at least identify it as Rabbi Seinu Darshu, that this is coming from the Gemara, from the Medrash? Second, at the end of the Rashi says, Ani Hashem Elokeichem zu Malchius v'chulu. This is Malchius, etc. What's the v'chulu? What's the etc.? It sounds like Rashi is alluding to something that he doesn't mention. What does that mean? And finally, as I mentioned before, that there's another Rashi where Rashi speaks about Malchius, Zichronis, and Shofros, and that's in Parshas Emor. And there, when Rashi speaks about saying Malchius, Zichronis, and Shofros, he clearly says the psuke Zichronis, psuke Shofros, the psukim of Zichronis and Shofros. Here, Rashi just says Malchius with Zichronis, with Shofros, without saying the word psukim. Incidentally, that Rashi Parshas Emor that we learned a few weeks ago in the Sicha was a Sicha that the Rebbe actually said at the same time that he said this Sicha. The primary focus of the Farbrengen was the Sicha, the Farbrengen that we learned, the Rashi that we're learning now, Parshas Behaalosecha. But while the Rebbe mentioned the pasuk Zichronis and Shofros, as mentioned in Parshas Emor, Psuke Zichronis and Psuke Shofros, the Rebbe explained that Rashi as well, as we learned a few weeks ago in Parshas Emor. So to summarize, if we want the three big issues that we want to summarize the three main issues that we're looking at in this Rashi. Number one, how does Rashi know we're talking about Karbonis Tzibur? Number two, in the second Rashi, why is Rashi teaching us that Ani Hashem Elokeichem it means Malchios, and then the pasuk therefore is telling us about Malchus, Zichronis, and Shofros going together? Why is there this need to tell us something that's not Pshutei Shel Mikra? And third of all, the details of the language that Rashi uses seems to indicate that there's some deeper meaning to this Rashi, why he doesn't say the word psukim, what's the v'chulud, etc. at the end of the Rashi. So we've become familiar with the Rebbe's method of learning a Rashi, is that when we see multiple questions in a Rashi, and we can find one more question that's going to sum it up and really change the gang, the way of understanding the Rashi, that question becomes the key to understanding the whole Rashi. So the last question that the Rebbe asks is the question that really will put us on the path of understanding this Rashi, and that is that if we look at this pasuk, we have another word that Rashi doesn't explain, and that is the words "Uviyoim simchaschem," on the day that you rejoice. What day are we talking about? Rashi completely ignores what day we're talking about. What is that day that we rejoice? Well, some Mefarshim say that it refers to Shabbos, as the Sifri says. But the problem with that is the problem is that Rashi does not say so. And in Pshutei Shamikra, and even in Halacha, it's not so simple to say that B'yom Simchaschem refers to Shabbos, something that the Rebbe does discuss more at length in another Sikha. And it certainly can't mean Yom Tif either, because the pasuk says B'moyadechem. So if that's the case, we have to look at this Rashi and say, at B'yom Simchaschem of the pasuk seems to be something that's obvious, but it's not mentioned. What is it? So if we take a better look at the psukim, we'll see that it's an obvious thing what that means. And this will become the key to understanding all of the Rashis in this pasuk. The pasuk, U b'yom simchaschem, and on the day that you rejoice. The vav, and, becomes key to understanding this pasuk. The pasuk begins and, which means it's following the previous pasuk. What does the previous pasuk say? The previous pasuk says that that when you come to go to war against your enemies, and you should blow shofar, and Hashem will remember you, and Hashem will save you from your enemies. In other words, the prior pasuk is also talking about blowing the trumpets or blowing the shofars when you're at war, and Hashem will remember you. So on the day that you rejoice for the victory of that war, now once again you'll celebrate, and you're going to bring karbanis to thank Hashem. At that point, the celebration of the victory of the war also requires that you should blow the trumpets to be remembered before the Eibishter. And therefore, now we know, very simple, Rashi knows that this pasuk is talking about karbanis tzibur, because Rashi is telling us, if we're taking a look at the previous pasuk, and that this pasuk is a continuation to the prior pasuk, then the prior pasuk is talking about Klal Yisrael going to war, being victorious in the war, and therefore making a celebration, a day of celebration. On that day, you'll bring karbanis to celebrate that victory. Karbanis tzibur, obviously, for the celebration of the community's victory. And both, hakasaf medaber, the whole pasuk, both the carbon oilus and the carbon shlamim are all the carbon tzibur that are being brought in celebration for the victory of the war. And for those, you should be blowing shofar, blowing chatzaitzes, blowing the trumpets when you bring in those karbanis as well. If that explains the first Rashi. Again, how does Rashi know that we're talking about karbanis tzibur? Because it's a continuation to the prior pasuk that tells us that the purpose of this simcha, of this joy, is the community's victory over their wars, over their enemies. But if that's the case, as Rashi, now I don't understand the words Ani Hashem Elokeichem in the pasuk. As we mentioned, Pshutei Shamikra Ani Hashem Elokeichem means that Hashem is ne'eman l'shalom sachar. Hashem is trusted to give us a reward. We know that already, because the prior pasuk says v'neishatem, that Hashem will save you. So the pasuk already told us that Hashem is going to give us a sachar. Hashem is going to give us a schar, the reward, the faithfulness of Hashem to give us a reward. Why is the pasuk repeating it again in this pasuk? Ani Hashem Elokeichem. The previous pasuk already told us that Ani Hashem Elokeichem, not in those words Ani Hashem Elokeichem, but the ne'eman l'shalom sachar, that Hashem is going to give us the reward and that we're going to be victorious. So therefore Rashi says this pasuk is coming to teach us a halacha. That even though the pshutei shel mikra is ne'eman l'shalom sachar, that Hashem is going to is faithful to reward, is a faithful God who will reward us, but we know that already. So the Torah is repeating it again in order to teach us halacha. What's that halacha? That whenever we have a concept of shofris and zichronis, we should always mention Malchias too. So even though it would seem that mentioning Malchias, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, is extra in this pasuk, because as we said, we just mentioned the concept in the previous pasuk that Hashem is ne'eman l'shalom sachar, but because we said zichronis and shofris, the blowing of the trumpets and the zikaron, that Hashem is going to remember us, we need to once again mention Malchias, which is expressed in the Ani Hashem Elokeichem. In other words, Ani Hashem Elokeichem in this pasuk means two things. First of all, it means Pshutei Shamikra, that Hashem is Ne'eman L'Shalom Sachar, that Hashem is faithful and will reward us. This is something that is Pshutei Shamikra. Rashi doesn't even have to tell us that that's what it means. But then it seems to be extra. So therefore Rashi says this is coming to teach us something. Not that we need to say psukim of Malchus and Zechrenis and Rosh Hashanah. That we already learned in Parshas Emor. This pasuk is teaching us something else. That whenever we speak about Malchus and whenever we speak about Zechrenis and Shofris, we should speak about Malchus as well. We should add Malchus to the pasuk too, even if it seems to be extra, because we mentioned it already in the previous pasuk. And this answers all the questions that we've mentioned, except for one that we'll see in a moment. So again, the first question was, how do we know that it's Karbonis Tzibur? Because this pasuk is a continuation. Ubiyem Simchaschem. The pasuk that doesn't even bother telling us what the simcha is, because it's obvious it's a continuation to the prior pasuk that's talking about the simcha of winning the war of the community. So therefore, we know that the whole pasuk is talking about Karbonis Tzibur, and the Oilan Shlamim is a Karban Tzibur. Then Rashi goes on to say, but one second, why is it saying Ani Hashem Elokeichem? That bothers Rashi. Why is that Ani Hashem Elokeichem, which in Pshutei Shemikra means that Hashem is going to give us the sachar, give us the schar that we deserve for the for serving Hashem. If the pasuk already said V'nei Shaten that Hashem will save us in the previous pasuk, so therefore Rashi says that this pasuk is teaching us a new halacha, and sometimes even Pshutei Shemikra is here to teach us halacha, and because in Pshutei Shemikra we don't understand why the pasuk has to repeat it, so therefore this pasuk has to be teaching us a halacha, not about psukim of Malchus, Zechrenis, and Shofris as we initially thought, but a new concept that whenever we mention Zechrenis and Shofris, we should also mention Malchus along with it as well. And that's why Rashi is not giving us a new interpretation to Ani Hashem Elokeichem, as we asked, why was Rashi looking for a new interpretation? Rashi is not negating the simple meaning Ani Hashem Elokeichem, and he doesn't have to tell us that because it's obvious. Rather, he's just telling us the reason for the repetition of Ani Hashem Elokeichem in this pasuk. We also understand why Rashi has to quote, even though he's quoting Ani Hashem Elokeichem, he's speaking about Malchus, Zechrenis, and Shofris, because he's not here to explain the Zechrenis and Shofris earlier. He's here to explain why Ani Hashem Elokeichem is mentioned. And Ani Hashem Elokeichem is mentioned because Zechrenis and Shofris were mentioned earlier in the pasuk. This also explains why Rashi doesn't say the word psukim. As we said before, it's not about the psukim. And it also explains why he doesn't say it's a drasha from Rabbi Seinu, as if this is unique halacha about something that has nothing to do with Pshutei Shemikra, because Rashi is understanding that Pshutei Shemikra is teaching us a halacha to mention Malchus along with Zechrenis and Shofris. The one question we have left to ask is what does Rashi mean by the v'chulu, by the etc. at the end? So the Rebbe says that the Rashi's here is coming to allude to the continuation of the Sifri, in which he answers a question that a sharp student will ask, which means that it's not a question that he has to really address, because only for a sharp student, but nonetheless, Rashi says v'chulu, that the sharp student could look up the Sifri and find the answer. And that question is that why is Rashi saying Malchus, Zechrenis, and Shofris, the way we say it in davening Rosh Hashanah, when in the pasuk it actually says Shofris, Zechrenis, and Malchus. And so therefore Rashi says v'chulu, etc. Look up the Sifri, and over there the Sifri says, why do we say first Malchus, then Zechrenis, and then Shofris and Rosh Hashanah if the pasuk says it the other way around? Because logically, first you have to have the Eibishter as a melech. Then you could ask a merachimim for him by blowing for Zechrenis. And how is that done? Through shofar. In other words, that the Sifri explains that although the pasuk says first Shofris, then Zechrenis, then Malchus, but practically speaking, the proper way to go about it is in the order of Malchus, Zechrenis, and Shofris. To explain Al Pi Chassidus now, the idea of the order of Malchus, Zechrenis, and Shofris. So the Rebbe says that it says in the Maimarim of Chassidus, based on the Kisvei Arizal, that in Sviros, Malchus is Malchus. Zechrenis refers to Zah, the other 6 midos, and Shofris corresponds to Bina. I'm not going to go into the details of the Maimarim. Maybe before Rosh Hashanah we can learn the Maimarim of why these are the connection between these Sfiras. But in any case, Shofres is Bina, Zichreinos is Za, the 6 Midas, and Malchus is Malchus. The Torah is Milmaila Lamata, the way it's coming from Hashem down to us, so it goes in the order of Bina, Midas, Malchus, or in the Shofres, Zichreinos, Malchus. However, our davening, which is Milmata Lamaila, us going up to Hashem, we do it the other way. Zichrein, first Malchus, Milmata Lamaila. First we have Malchus, as we said before from the Medrash. We build the Behaalosecha of Malchus. From there we come to Zichreinis, and then we elevate the Bina to Shofres. The Iran Avedis Hashem from this idea. And before we say that, it's interesting to note that this Sicha was said shortly after the 6-Day War. And I think, my humble opinion, that this is also in connection to the fact that it was after the 6-Day War. And that is that the Rebbe looks at the Avedis Hashem in this pasuk as follows. The first pasuk says, Kisavoyel Milchama, when you come to a war. That's obviously referring to the war that every single Yid has to fight with the biggest enemy that we have, which is the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara, Chas v'Shalom, comes to be mevalvel us when we daven all day, and especially when we daven, and machshav zaris and so on, trying to disturb us from serving the Eibishter. So the pasuk and it tells us, what do you do when the Yetzer Hara fights you? The first thing is va'areisim b'chatzeitzes, you should blow the trumpets, which is, as we know from Rosh Hashanah, blowing the shofars, and similarly here, blowing the trumpets, is the idea of a leiv nishbar, a broken heart, of tshuva, coming closer to the Eibishter. And as Alter Rebbe says in the end of Perek of Chesav Tanya, to beg the Eibishter for Achmanis, to help us daven, to save us from the Yetzer Hara, to come before the Eibishter with the bittul of Hashem helping us to fight the Yetzer Hara. In other words, the first step in succeeding in fighting the Yetzer Hara is the bittul to the Eibishter and recognizing that we need the Eibishter's help to overcome. And if we come with that bittul, the pasuk says that V'neshatem ma'ivechem, Hashem is certainly going to save you from the Yetzer Hara. So the Eibishter saved you. U'b'yem simchaschem. I'm now on a day of joy. I've gotten rid of my Yetzer Hara. I'm now in a state that I can rejoice. I have a geschmack in Yiddishkeit. My Yetzer Hara is not bothering me as much or at all. Halavai. And now I could say, I could lean back. I could be on my own. Comes the second pasuk and says, "Uvayim simchaschem," that even when things are going well for you with your fight with the Yetzer Hara, never forget that even after the Netzachin of the Mechama and you're ready to bring Karbanis L'Lashon Kiruv, you're coming close to Hashem. Uskatem b'chatzeitzris aloseichem al zivchei shalmeichem. You still have to have the bittul to the Eibishter, which means that even if you first you have to bring a carbon oila, which goes completely to Hashem, a complete bittul to the Eibishter, and then you can go to zivchei shalmeichem. You can start finding the carbon shlamim. The person who brought the carbon also got to eat some of the carbon, which means that now you're able to internalize your connection to the Eibishter b'pnimis as well. Or more b'chlalus, the carbon oila is davening, like we know that the davening is connected, the carbon tamid, which are karbanis oila. And the carbon shlamim, as we said before, is where the bailim, the people who brought the carbon, would also eat from it. That corresponds to the idea of the idea of going to business. So the pasuk's telling us that even after you won Yetzer Hara, you have to remember that the first thing is bring a carbon oila. You have to daven. You have to be connected to the Eibishter. And only then could you go to Zivchei Shalmeichem, could you go to the carbon shlamim to bring in your own work. Again, the second pasuk and the main idea of the Sicha is that, of course, we understand that we need bittul to the Eibishter and help with the Eibishter, and we have to overcome the Yetzer Hara. But never to let go of this concept of bittul and connection to Hashem, to think that we're good on our own. That even when we have ubiyim simchaschem, we have to remember our bittul to the Eibishter, our carbon oila. And then with that koyach, we'll be able to go to Zivchei Shalmeichem, we'll be able to go to serve the Eibishter in our own personal ideas as well. And Rashi concludes and says, or began by saying, that when a person wants to succeed in his davening, to become batul to the Eibishter, it's important that we all include ourselves with the tzibur. Dafke davening together with the korban tzibur is the way that the Eibishter, dafke davening with the tzibur is the way that the Eibishter accepts our tefillas best. So the Eibishter should help that we should all be able to successfully and continuously be able to daven with the tzibur, to be able to bring ourselves closer to the Eibishter, and that we should have simchaschem kipshutei lots of simcha.